Hello, it's Emily SW again.
Sam.
Here with part 2 of the Witch Chat. Everything we're discussing today in this chit chat has nothing to do with people who practice witchcraft or are pagan or Wiccan or anything like that. We are not talking about modern witches or the practice of witchcraft as a religion. We are talking only about the historical context, about books, folklore, movies, TV shows, basically what people thought about witches and witchcraft in different time periods, what was written about them that formed those opinions. We are in no way referencing people who practice witchcraft in any way, shape, or form. Purely fictional. We are talking about fictional witches.
Which witch?
And we're coming at you here with our Gothic literature and our more modern
Last
media.
time we talked about ancient Greek with Circe, Morgan Le Fay, and Arthurian legend, Merlin,
Hecate,
early medieval grimoires,
alchemists.
and then we talked about the witch hammer for about 5 years.
So if you didn't listen to that, I think it's a good one. Go back and check that out. But once you're done with that, we're going to move on to our favorite subject, which is Gothic literature. You've listened to our Gothic chit-chat. This is the first one we're going to talk about is going to be familiar to you. Very famous. It is none other than
The Monk.
Woohoo! Well, that wasn't really an appropriate sound effect.
No.
I'm excited. I love The Monk. The Monk is one of my favorite things.
I read it.
Yeah, again, I didn't read it, but I love it. I love this frickin' story.
Okay, so this was the one with the layers of evil. Our witch started off disguised as a man in order to gain access to the monastery, find out actually a woman, so she could get close to the monk of the title. And then you find out actually a witch.
Oh no.
In order to get Satan close to the monk of the title.
Oh no.
Yeah, so that was our onion layers of evil.
Yeah.
Woman, witch, Satan. Progressively more evil.
Yes, and you'll notice the woman is a part of that evil layer.
She wasn't portrayed as evil or ugly. No, she was portrayed as evil. She wasn't portrayed as ugly or old, is what I was trying to say. There was a scene where she summoned demons, and when she appears at the end to have the monk finally sign a contract and sell his soul to Satan for real, I believe there were demons with her. So the monk is important. And again, we touched on this in the Gothic chat, but it's 1796. It's one of the earliest. Yeah, we've talked about the monk so much.
Yeah, we're not going to spend too much time on him. There's not a whole lot of witches in Gothic literature specifically.
I did also read this story, The Witch of Ravensworth.
Yeah, so now this is 1808, so a little bit after the monk.
This book, I was only able to find a free Google Books version.
Because I remember we looked in the library database, we couldn't find it.
The Witch of Ravensworth takes place during the Middle Ages, during the Crusades.
Okay.
Because main character, Baron, was a crusader. So he's a knight. He's got land, he's got wealth, he's got his own castle. He decides he wants to marry a widow. And she has her own very young child. And they get married, and they have their own son. And he's thinking, man, too bad this other child is here, preventing my son from inheriting 2 estates worth of inheritance from the husband who had passed away, and also his own. He comes up with this plan because when they had been married, the witch showed up that the bride would be cursed or unhappy. So he comes up with this plan. He's going to go consult the witch. There's a
logical. It's very sensible.
Yeah, right. There's a very long description of the witch and where she lives in the beginning. So she lives by herself in a hut. She's very old. She's very ugly. She's got 2 familiars, a gray cat and a raven with 1 wing. She always has a fire burning, even when it's hot. And she doesn't grow anything edible in her garden.
We're hitting all the tropes here.
She didn't fly on a broom, though.
She sounds just kind of like the crone.
So he goes to consult the witch, and she tells him to bring the child to her. And every time he goes to consult her, she goes and she makes him witness all these super demonic things, and they're really terrifying, and each time he's terrified, but then he follows through anyway. So he kidnaps his stepson, takes him to the witch, and she also, I noticed that she does everything in threes. She sits on a 3-legged stool. She does something. When she does the spell, she does it 3 times, and when she takes the little boy, she goes and she circles her hut 3 times. And she comes back without him. It's implied. No, it's not even implied. She says it. He says, oh, did you get rid of him? She goes, yeah. And she says, I wanted to eat him, but my demon lord took him instead.
Satan was like, hey, I know you're hungry, but I want this kid.
There's also, too, mention when the Baron enters her hut that there's like a cauldron that looks like it has human body parts in it.
Ooh, creepy.
Yeah. Eating babies. Demons.
Mm-hmm.
Directly. That's not subtle.
My demon lord.
There's no implication. It's direct. It's stated. It's explicit.
And we've got the familiars, the garden that's for nefarious purposes, or at least not for eating things.
So then he also decides he wants to get rid of his wife, so he consults the witch again, and she helps him murder his wife.
As a witch does.
Right. Because he had met this, younger, more beautiful woman, but she's more interested in this very young knight. They didn't get married anyway, and she just starts having affairs because she can, why not? They're having dinner, and he drinks something, and oh my goodness, it's been poisoned.
Oh no!
And he thinks it's his new wife, so he stabs her to death. He dies because of the poison, and then it turns out that there was this woodcutter's family, and they had an adopted son, and they were very poor, even though the wife wanted more money. The Baron came across them and was, I guess, charmed by their simple ways, so he had decided to leave everything with them. So they go to claim their property, and then the witch comes back, and it turns out not really a witch.
Gasp!
No, she's the Baron's first wife.
Ooh, plot twist.
And he had tried to get rid of her, but she survived and had spent all these years now exacting her revenge. And the adopted woodcutter's son is really...
Can you guess it? Can you guess it? Audience, were you paying attention?
The little boy that the witch gave to the devil. Not really. She left him on their front step.
I love that so much.
The little boy's mother is also still alive. There was no murders.
Mm-hmm.
The Baron is also still alive, but now he's seen the errors of his ways, so he's going to join a monastery.
You said there were no murders. He did stab his pretty young wife.
I'm still getting that.
Oh, okay.
The only murder was the very sexual woman.
That's true. The only person who was killed was the sexual woman.
Who also was like 6'4". That was a detail that he threw in.
They're trying to portray her as unwomanly, right?
Yeah. But she's
not
beautiful,
diminutive.
but very beautiful.
Kind of a happy ending.
What I was really hoping for was hoping that the kid would not be dead, which he wasn't, so I was satisfied, but I was really hoping that he would come back and get revenge.
Yeah.
That was what I was hoping
Like,
for.
if it was, like, some sort of, like, modern-day movie, it's like, he would have gone somewhere to, like, a monastery, but instead of, like, where they prayed to Jesus, it's like, their prayer is learning how to fight. So that he becomes really, like, a warrior. Like, that would be the modern fantasy version. And then he comes back and kicks his father's ass.
That was quite a twist ending.
It is.
I didn't see it coming.
Yeah, so it's like she is a witch, but she's not a witch.
No, she wasn't a witch. It was all just a trick.
Yeah.
The whole time. And they explained everything.
I do like that story. It's a pretty cool story. No.
Strangely, where the witch turned out to be the hero.
Although, at the beginning, when you're supposed to think she is a witch, she falls into a lot of those tropes. But then it's like, oh, surprise, she's not a witch.
Yeah.
Technically, the witch was still the bad person. It's the human woman that's the hero.
Mm-hmm.
That's semantics. Anyways, we also have a couple Grimm's classics, some Grimm's fairy tales to discuss here. In a similar vein of eating children. I mean, do we even need to explain this one? The witch eats kids. She's trying to lure kids in with candy and sweets in a gingerbread house because she wants to eat them. Grimm's fairy tales were published in 1812, but they're based on folklore, stuff like that.
Really old stories.
Yes, so I'm sure the original tale of Hansel and Gretel goes back further than 1812, but that's what the Grimm's version is, which is the authoritative version of a lot of these kinds of fairy tales.
Yeah, most of these fairy tales, like, it's kind of amazing that Disney was able to make a lot of them into as happy, fluffy.
Well, it's because they changed so much.
They are.
Yeah,
because they're dark. Well, a lot of these stories too, they're cautionary tales.
Yes.
They're meant to teach lessons, and they're also meant to make your naughty children stay in bed.
Well, yeah, yeah, that's true. Snow White does have a happy Disney adaptation. Here in Snow White, we have the evil queen disguising herself, so that's transfiguration.
Mm-hmm.
So she's this beautiful woman who's jealous because Snow White is even more beautifuler. You know, she banishes her. When that doesn't work, she turns into an old hag to poison Snow White. So we have the potions, the transfiguration, the aspect of the crone, the old hag.
You know, and in the Disney movie, she's got Raven hanging in her potion room.
She's got a familiar in the movie. She's also, she's a queen. She's a woman in power. And she's set up against Snow White, who's supposed to be this virtuous, pure kind of...
I mean, literally, white.
Yeah, yeah.
That's not even a subtle symbol there at all.
No. She's envious of Snow White's beauty, which you've got like a very classic vice there. Deadly sin.
Envy, yeah.
Those are the two main kind of Grimm's fairy tales we have during the Gothic literature time period.
I think a lot of them have witches in them.
Yeah. These are the two that stick out to me. But since we are kind of looking at this in the lens of, you know, how our perception of witches changes through the ages, I think Snow White's an obvious one. Because it's a very important, very iconic Disney movie. And that, you know, that movie made a big impression on a lot of people and culture and all that stuff. And then Hansel and Gretel is just Hansel and Gretel.
Yeah, we didn't write down Sleeping Beauty because very briefly talked about with Morgan Le Fay when we were making our notes, not in the chit chat, was they're fairies. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like a different type of being altogether. Yeah. And I always thought of the antagonist in Sleeping Beauty as being just like a dark fairy. The same kind of being as
the good fairies.
Maleficent had come up on our list, but we didn't write it down first because I've never seen it.
I haven't seen that.
And also, because I don't think of her as a witch, I think of her as...
like, unseelie, like some sort of evil dark fae or whatever.
Right.
Yes, and then there's a couple things... In our research, we did find a couple more that we didn't get to reading quite yet. One of them's the Lancashire Witches. That's from 1848. And then one from 1861 is Lois the Witch and Other Tales, which is interesting because it's written by a woman. That's more like shorter.
Yeah, we haven't had any female authors yet.
So those are some that, again, it came up in our research, but there's not a whole lot of Gothic literature kind of involving witches. We had to, we did a lot of digging to get what we got. We're going to bring in some references to movies and stuff, partially because a lot of these things originated as books and then were adapted into movies.
This is also where we see our biggest shift in how witches are portrayed.
We go into, they're pretty usually secular. We're kind of getting away from that satanic witch, that like witch hammer witch who's in league with the devil.
Yeah, now they're kind of more turning into a vehicle for fun magic.
We're going to start with The Wizard of Oz here. Now, the book comes out in 1900, the movie comes out in 1939.
We very clearly have different kinds of witches.
We have the good witch and the bad witch. Glinda and the Wicked Witch of the West. So we got the ugly hag. She's green. She's got warts. I think in the book she's not green, but she's ugly.
In the movie she's definitely green. Yeah. Doesn't she have like those Puritan like buckle shoes?
Yes. She's wearing all black.
So kind of what you think of with the people of the old Salem, Massachusetts.
The big pointy hat. And she basically the Wicked Witch of the West in the movie The Wizard of Oz from 1939 is basically the template for witch Halloween costumes. Yes. I mean, even I, as a modern person, when I was a witch as a child, you know, I had the hook nose and the warts and the green skin.
We did puppet shows in my 5th grade class of different fairy tales, and I was assigned a witch. Guess what my witch puppet looked like? Green. Big nose.
Black.
All black.
So how much of that green skin was based on culture, and how much of that was because it was like the first Technicolor film and everyone was excited to show it off?
It was a good way to differentiate your types of characters.
Yeah, that's true. Too. In The Wicked Witch, she's ugly. That's how you know she's evil. She flies. She has a broom. She can control creatures, which in the movie is flying monkeys. I think there's some different instances in the book. And she's aquaphobic, which means... I mean, everyone's seen The Wizard of Oz, right? She melts under the water. She can't be in the water. Which is very interesting. That's the first time that's really... like, the only thing you can maybe liken it to is, like, holy water. But that never really...
Maybe. Now, see, I'm trying to think. There were, in the witch trials, trial by water. Where you would throw a witch into a pond, and if she floats, she's a witch. She's saying she's not a witch. So that's kind of like the opposite of that, right? But the reason, and it's explained in The Witch Hammer, the reason why, and I said I didn't explain, but the reason why if you torture a witch, it won't work is because the devil protects her from feeling any pain. When you throw her in the water, the devil's going to make her float.
Interesting. She's got, like, devil protection.
Yeah. Instead of, you know, godly protection. So the mental gymnastics here are just...
Yeah, you know, the Middle Ages were a thing. That was a thing that happened. Well, and really, like, you don't really see witches being aquaphobic other than
You know what as soon as you said aquaphobic, you know what I start thinking of? Rabies.
Oh, yeah, that's the thing with rabies.
But what is the correlation
I
here?
don't know. I mean, there might not be.
It probably isn't.
No.
I would more quickly correlate rabies with zombies.
It's like the one episode of BuzzFeed Unsolved. I've connected it. You haven't connected shit. I've connected it. So then, you have the Good Witch. She's wears pink. The movie, she's blonde. She's a white blonde lady.
Yeah, it was kind of funny because every time I see the Good Witch, I still think like she should be some kind of like fairy.
Yeah, but they do call her the Good Witch.
The Good Witch, yeah, but the way she's styled is still very like fairy or princess.
She has like wings, I think, in the movie.
Yeah, I think she does.
And she flies in like a bubble. She doesn't have a broom. The Wicked Witch flies with a broom.
It's because you need baby bones to make your broom fly.
Yeah. And the other thing in The Wizard of Oz is the titular character, the Wizard.
Ah, yes.
I always forget about him because he's the least interesting.
He is also there.
So the Wizard of Oz, he solves problems. He's a venerated guy. Well, I guess you could call him a shapeshifter. Spoilers for the movie from 1939. The Wizard of Oz is not actually a wizard. He's a man from a balloon from the real world. As you would. He's like, oh, you know what I'm gonna do? They think I'm a wizard. I'm gonna be a wizard. So then he, takes advantage of all these people. He solves people's problems. He appears in different forms in the book to each different character. So he appears as a big giant head. He appears as a fairy, a monster, and just a ball of fire in a disembodied voice in the books. I think in the movie it's just the disembodied voice, isn't it?
Yeah. Doing like fire is kind of an interesting choice because that's how God appears to people a lot in the Bible.
Yeah, the burning bush. But he's just a con man. Kind of equate him to being an alchemist. So that's the Wizard of Oz. We're going to talk about Wicked later, before anyone gets antsy. We're going in chronological here. So we're going to briefly touch on Casper the Friendly Ghost, because I had a special request from the waifu. So the cartoon came out in 1939. The movie, Casper Meets Wendy, came out in 1995. And we have Wendy the Good Little Witch here. I was not familiar with this until I met my wife. But this is a big classic for her. Wendy, again, it's in their name. She's a good witch. She's interacting with the ghosts. And I think they fight some bad witches, maybe?
I've never seen any version.
I don't remember.
The fact that we have now at this point good witches.
Yeah, that's the thing.
It's such a deviation from everything we've had.
We're coming into this era where fantasy and these magical things are, good in, popular media, and people love this stuff. Even Casper, the original cartoon, it's about ghosts. It's about a family of ghosts. Wendy, the good witch, is introduced as a side character. The supernatural is just yeah, it's cool, it's fun now. So we've got quite this shift here in a very short period of time. So now, again, going in chronological order, the novel, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, came out in 1950. The witch is literally Satan. She's luring children with sweets, which is in line with Hansel and Gretel and other. She's manipulative. Also Narnia, it's very cold. The witch is cold. They're in another realm. That's one of the exceptions to the rule of generally secular. Okay, so moving on, we've got Bewitched from 1964. This is not a piece of literature, this is a TV show. The main character in Bewitched is a very, very 60s woman. She's a housewife.
Yeah.
She's doing things to please her husband. Her husband gets mad at her for using magic.
True.
And that's the whole crux, that's the funny part of the show.
Yeah, that's where most of the conflict comes in, is because she uses magic when she's not supposed to and it causes problems.
And he's like, oh, you. And now here in this universe, the magic is hidden from non-magical people or mortals.
Yeah, and the witches are implied to be not necessarily immortal, but they age very, very slowly.
Yeah, which is something we see in a lot of media from here on out. So, and we also have another realm in this, the magical realm and then the non-magical realm.
Right, and the witches can kind of poof in and out of it. And they can teleport, poof, in the middle of your living room.
I don't know, maybe that's supposed to tie into, the way, they're communing with the devil, who's on a different plane of existence, except now they're good, so it's not the devil, they're just...
Yeah, there's no religion involved at all.
And then in 1983, we get The Witches, a novel by Roald Dahl. There's now multiple movie adaptations.
And I have not seen a single one of them.
Very disturbing story.
I read it. I hated it.
It's not a happy story. Well, let's just get the basics out of the way. The witches want to eat children.
We're back to the eating children.
Yes, the witches are evil in this book. They turn people into beasts, specifically, was it mice? And they're using candy to lure the children in, another common theme. What's the vice of a 7-year-old? You know, it's not drugs, it's not booze, it's not women.
It's sweets.
Sweets. That's like the little child version of sin.
These witches are also disguised.
Yes.
They're very ugly.
But you wouldn't know it. Because they're secretly in society hiding themselves.
Oh, they have no toes.
No toes. I knew there was something involved with feet. They have claws, they're bald, they have no toes, and large nostrils. And they're described as female demons.
Yeah, so they're almost like a different species altogether.
Offers snake to lure the kid down. Snake. Symbolic.
That's true. That is super symbolic of, you know, the devil.
The devil. And so now the consequence of this is the child is now afraid of women. So kind of like the witch hammer.
Oh dear.
But yeah, very, very, very dark book. I mean, all of Roald Dahl's books are real dark. But The Witches doesn't really have a happy ending.
No, yeah, all the rest of them, like, redeem themselves in the end. This one, the reason I hated it was because of the ending.
Yeah. We're gonna jump around, or jump forward a little bit, to Howl's Moving Castle.
Oh, yes.
Now, the book came out in 1986, and the anime, the very famous movie, came out in 2004. We're gonna mostly talk about the movie. The plot of the book, I have never read it. I read a summary of it, and I was like, what the hell is this?
I read the beginning of it, and I was like, man, this is nothing like the movie, and I never finished it.
Yeah, big proponent of reading books and stuff like that. Books usually better than the movie, but Howl's Moving Castle, the anime, is top tier. We've got witches and wizards.
But the wizard also supposedly eats hearts.
Supposedly it's a big thing. The wizard eats the hearts of people.
Of women. Beautiful women specifically.
Mm-hmm.
So not children, but we still kind of have this
Preying
on people and eating them.
Yeah, preying on women specifically.
But it turned out to not be true.
Yes, we find out later, spoiler alert, Howl is not actually eating hearts. He's just a big lazy baby.
Who doesn't have a heart.
Who doesn't have a heart.
Like, literally.
Yes. So he's a very powerful wizard. There's a big magical house. Deities, I guess. You got the fire demon. What demons?
He's actually a shooting star, though.
Yeah, it's true. Calcifer.
Which kind of sounds like Lucifer.
Yeah. Fire? Lucifer?
Oh, and the star. So in the story of Lucifer,
and
he's the morning star.
And even the falling aspect.
Mm-hmm.
That is interesting. Howl, he does magic stuff, and he's kind of... The whole thing in there is that if he goes too far, I guess, he turns into a monster. Yeah. With the little crow man. Or if he's being really dramatic, he turns into a pile of goo.
Yeah, he calls the spirits.
Yeah. So he's using spirits to do his magic, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the Witch of the Wastes. Transfiguration. She kind of changes her form.
Yeah, she used magic to make herself appear younger. Madame Solomon, which I guess was a man in the novel. That's another magic person. And then Sophie is actually also a magical.
Yeah, but she doesn't know it.
She doesn't know it, yes. And that's why, she manipulates her own curse without realizing that she is doing it.
Very good. I only watched it for the first time very recently, but it's already one of my favorite movies. Solid classic. And in a similar vein, we've got Kiki's Delivery Service. Another good little witch. She's a very, visually at least, very traditional witch. She wears dark colors. She flies on a broom. She is a good witch. She doesn't have a hat. She has a cute little red bow.
No, but she's got a black cat familiar.
Yeah, she's got a familiar. In that world, it's acceptable. Like, magic is out in the open. It's like, hey, I'm a witch, I fly, and everyone's like, hey, what's up? So it's not a big deal.
It's still kind of like...
I guess it's kind of novel.
It's not... yeah, exactly. It's like when she first goes to that city, everyone's like, oh, I saw a witch, you know?
Yeah.
Like, no one's persecuting her, but it's still kind of like, oh, did you see the thing?
Mm-hmm. We have some of those old tropes, but good witch, good story. So now we're going to get into Wicked, the book and the musical. I'm more familiar with the musical. It's the story of the Wicked Witch of the West before she becomes the Wicked Witch of the West in The Wizard of Oz. Basically, in Wicked, if you're not familiar, the whole thing is that Elphaba, the Wicked Witch of the West, is persecuted for having ideas that are opposite to the prevailing powers of the day. It's a very anti-establishment. And the whole conflict with Glinda, they're friends in school, and then Glinda works for the man. Elphaba is anti-man, and the man is anti-Elphaba. Because she's green. she's a freak. People say she's a freak. They don't like her because she's green. The musical, I think, is more important than the book, just because, obviously, the musical is based on the book, but the musical is much more prevalent. It's taking all those tropes about the bad witch and turning them on their head and making the Wicked Witch the protagonist.
Right.
Which is interesting. So then we get into Harry Potter, which is Harry Potter.
It's kind of like the elephant in the room.
Yeah,
right?
We can't not talk about it.
I don't think there's any way around talking about it, because it's such a famous story about witchcraft.
It literally shaped a lot of people's childhoods.
It also changed the landscape of, I think, young adult and youth fiction.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Because it really established, I guess, the boarding school.
Oh, God, that trope.
Setting.
Yeah.
And it also set us up, I think, and we're going to go back to our magical number here.
Number 3.
Our 3 character group. And this character group almost always consists of 2 boys and 1 girl.
Can't have too many girls.
Got our magical number here, so...
The golden trio.
Harry, Ron, Hermione, but you've also got Draco, Crabbe, and Goyle. Draco, Malfoy, Crabbe, and Goyle.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, what other 3s do we have here?
That's 3, isn't it?
Them.
Yeah.
Yeah, the cloak, the wand, and the stone.
The stone. They're wearing the black pointy hats, they've got the black robes, they use wands,
they were
potions.
Supposed to be wearing the black pointy hats. They're not really depicted doing that very much.
Familiars, brooms. We're hitting just like all
literally
the points.
Everything.
Yeah.
Every wizard and witch stereotype you can think of, it's in Harry Potter. She even established hags as a magical species.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. With the magical world, there's also not only witches and wizards, but ogres and giants and dragons.
I had a lot of religious groups trying to censor it.
I was homeschooled as a teenager, not for religious reasons. If anyone out there has been homeschooled, you may know a lot of the resources are heavily Christian. And the message boards are heavily Christian. So I had a friend that I made as a teenager, another homeschooled kid, very religious. She would not read Harry Potter because to her, she personally felt, since they were practicing witchcraft, that was of the devil and was bad. The interesting thing about this, to me, this is a bit of a tangent, she watched X-Men. And she liked X-Men. And it was like her favorite thing. And the reason she could watch X-Men is it wasn't magic. It was genetics. But the magic in Harry Potter, God didn't do that, even though they're born with it. So theoretically, didn't he give them the magic? That never made sense to me.
Yeah.
But anyways.
Very vocal opposition to the witchcraft in Harry Potter. Which is, again, never attributed to any religious...
There's no demons.
There's no demons.
The closest thing you have is Voldemort, who is a former man.
Also, he's portrayed as being very snake-like.
Yes.
Which is, again... a Satan metaphor, and he's the villain.
Mm-hmm.
He's like the big bad.
Harry is resurrected and triumphs over evil.
Harry is a very like Jesus-like figure.
He's very Christ-like.
Yeah, he dies and comes back and
vanquishes
the devil. Yeah.
So then we could just briefly touch on some more 90s and 2000s witches, mostly movies and TV shows. We got Hocus Pocus.
Back to our satanic witches.
Yes, now really very much satanic. They're old, they're hags, except for there's the pretty and ditzy one, who's promiscuous, who's flirting with all the guys, so you've got the 2 ugly hags, and then the sexy one. We're covering all our stereotype bases.
Yeah, basically.
They're luring children, and they specifically are trying to use the children to become young and beautiful again, so they're immortal. There's 3 of them, and they are sisters. They fly on brooms and vacuums, which is funny. They're very specifically satanic. They are calling on their Lord Satan. They see a man in a Satan Halloween costume and they think he's Satan.
For real.
For real. And they're like, oh my god, master.
Man, the way times change.
Just for real. I didn't write this down, but in Hocus Pocus, one of the big things is the reason the witches come back is because a virgin lights the candle. So we've got the play of virginity.
The innocence.
Of course, the subversion in Hocus Pocus is it's a guy doing it.
Won't.
Which makes sense, because they're children.
Yeah.
We've also got that trope with ties into sexuality. We also have Sabrina from the 90s. The show came out in 1996. It's based on Archie comics. No, we're not talking about the comics, we're talking about the TV show.
I have read some of the comics, but it was ages and ages ago. And
So
I have watched the TV show all the way through within the past 3 years.
Yes, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, classic. We've got mortals, the mortal realm and the witch realm.
Mm-hmm.
Witches are immortal. Magic is hidden. They make potions, and they do spells. Halloween is a holiday. It's a very important, like, spiritual holiday for them. There's ghosts and spirits and, like, other creatures. And there's 3 of them. There's Sabrina and her 2 aunts.
It's a magic number.
Playing on the good witch thing. They're just living in society, doing their thing. We've got Charmed. That's from 1998. Again, there's 3 of them. They're good witches. They're fighting demons and warlock. I want to mention Halloween Town, Disney Channel original movie franchise, just because I love it and I think it's great. There's good witches and bad witches in Halloween Town. There's a mortal realm and the human realm. Magic is very hokey, I guess. Like, it's very cheesy, kiddie Halloween. Like, they're doing the rhyming spells, and the cute little rhyming couplets, and they're all, you know, wearing the fun robes. And
yeah, well, that stuff all also comes out of medieval magic. You have to make your magic circle and say some magic words and invoke some demons.
That brings us to the end of our list of culturally relevant.
The only thing I can think of that's newer is the Netflix Sabrina show, which was also about satanic witches, but it was very morally confused. But that also hit every witch trope you could think of.
Yeah.
First they're worshipping Satan, and then Satan's no good, and then they're worshipping Lilith, and then... I don't know what happens. And then they were worshipping Hecate, and then they were fighting with pagans, because that made sense. Oh, and then there was Lovecraftian elder gods. So they were just throwing it all in there.
Yeah, it was just everything.
What did we learn?
We're very secular in modern times.
We sure are.
And even if you have media where the witch is bad, those are fewer and farther in between. Usually they're more sympathetic or they're good, the protagonists. I mean... Harry Potter spawned an entire genre of magical children's and young adult.
Like, we really ping-ponged back and forth with whether or not witches were good or bad.
Yeah, and now we're kind of back, like you mentioned earlier, we kind of, like, circle back around to, like...
circle. Back to, like, the wise wizard.
Yeah.
The good witch. The folk healer.
Yeah, I think that's definitely more prevalent today.
So that was our witchy chit-chat.
Tune in for the next one.
About some topic.
Yeah, at some other time.
Some other
stuff.
Place. Right here on our channel.
Da-da-da! Bye!
Bye! Still waving here like anyone can see me. See me. See me.